Barack Obama versus Donald Trump. Two of the most iconic and controversial figures in modern American history. But who had the biggest impact on the United States? Was it the calm, collected orator who inspired millions, or the fiery businessman turned president who polarized the nation like never before? Today we're diving into a head-to-head showdown between the 44th and 45th presidents of the United States. Buckle up because this is going to get interesting. Section 1. The Policies, a Tale of Two Strategies. Let's start with the basics, the policies. Obama's tenure is known for promoting social reforms, environmental consciousness, and diplomacy. Trump's policies? Well, let's just say they were bold, unpredictable, and often loud. But which one shaped America more? Let's break it down. Obama's signature achievement was the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. He wanted to ensure healthcare was a right, not a privilege. And while some Republicans didn't exactly throw him a party for it, it still stands as one of the most significant pieces of domestic policy in recent US history. Meanwhile, Trump's signature policy was the tax cuts, a massive overhaul of the tax code that primarily benefited the wealthy and corporations. So no surprise, Wall Street was very happy with that one. But the question remains, did it benefit the average American as much as Obama's healthcare reforms? Obama's healthcare reform was like that one awkward family gathering where everyone disagrees, but hey, at least you got some good food. Trump's tax cuts. Think of them as that uncle who shows up, hands out a few extra bills, and leaves the party early. But both policies had a long-lasting impact, just in different ways. Imagine this. Obama's healthcare reform was like a big group hug. Everyone gets a piece of the blanket. Trump's tax cuts, on the other hand, were more like your rich uncle at Thanksgiving who says, "I got this," and then leaves with the turkey. There's food for some, but others are left wondering where the mashed potatoes went. A deep dive. Let's break it down even further. Healthcare and tax cuts are the big ones, but what about jobs and the economy? Obama came into office during the financial crisis, and let's be honest, it was like he walked into a house that was already on fire. He managed to calm the flames somewhat. His stimulus bill was like throwing water on a forest fire, but it at least slowed things down. Obama invested in renewable energy and technology, creating green jobs. Not exactly the kind of work where you get to show off your carpentry skills, but hey, they were jobs. And for the first time, healthcare was made accessible for millions of Americans. Sure, there was some grumbling and the whole website crash fiasco, but it worked. Eventually, Obama may not have been able to make every single thing work, but if you look at the broader picture, he did what many thought was impossible. He made healthcare affordable for millions. Of course, Trump's idea of healthcare involved a little more. Well, let's say less affordable options. If you had insurance, you were probably okay. If you didn't, well, good luck. Now, Trump came in with tax cuts, and while Obama's Affordable Care Act was a fight for the underdogs, Trump's tax cuts were a bit of a win for the 1%. Let's not sugarcoat it. Wall Street was thrilled. Small businesses? Not so much. Some critics even joked that the only people who truly benefited from Trump's tax cuts were, well, Trump's friends. But hey, it's not all bad. If you're a billionaire, you were probably throwing confetti every time your tax return came in. Imagine this. Obama's healthcare reform was like a big group hug. Everyone gets a piece of the blanket. Trump's tax cuts, on the other hand, were more like your rich uncle at Thanksgiving who says, "I got this," and then leaves with the turkey. There's food for some, but others are left wondering where the mashed potatoes went. Section 2. Domestic impact. The good, the bad, and the wait what? Now let's talk about how their presidencies affected life inside the US. Obama inherited a country reeling from the 2008 financial crisis. Unemployment was soaring, and the economy was barely standing up straight. By the end of his term, unemployment had dropped, the economy was rebounding, and the stock market had soared to record heights. Yes, his presidency wasn't without its hiccups. Hello, 2009 stimulus package, but it gave many Americans a sense of recovery. And then came Trump. His presidency kicked off with the promise to drain the swamp and make America great again. His administration cut regulations, and the economy boomed in some sectors. Unemployment hit historic lows, until, of course, 2020, when a little thing called the pandemic came along to flip the table and send the world into chaos. But hey, let's give credit where it's due. Trump did preside over a growing economy for a time. It's like they say, the economy was doing great until it wasn't. But despite the chaos, there were some wins, especially for the stock market. If you owned shares of Amazon, you were probably throwing parties by the end of his term. If you owned a small business, well, let's just say you probably weren't as impressed with the 2020 relief efforts. Expanded Section 2, Economic Impact. Now, let's talk about the economy, because honestly, this is where things get really interesting. Under Obama, the country was facing one of the worst recessions in history. The banks had nearly collapsed, and people were losing homes faster than you can say subprime mortgage. But by the end of his second term, the economy was growing at a steady pace. Unemployment rates fell, and those who had jobs were seeing wages slowly creep up. It wasn't the flashiest recovery, but it was steady, sort of like your friend who never wins the lottery but is always there to lend you a hand when you need it. Meanwhile, Trump had a different playbook. At first, it was like a sugar rush, tax cuts, deregulation, and low unemployment. If you were a CEO, you were probably taking out a second yacht loan, but when the pandemic hit, even Trump's economy wasn't immune to chaos. It was like throwing a party, and then suddenly, everyone's getting kicked out by the bouncer because, well, the bouncer's a virus. By the time the pandemic hit, the economy's growth had more to do with the stock market than actual paychecks in people's hands. If you were lucky enough to work from home or have a career that wasn't affected by the shutdown, great. But for most people, it was more hope for a paycheck than hope for a stock boom. So while Trump's early years were marked by a robust economy, the pandemic was the ultimate curveball. Section 3, Foreign Policy, the global stage. Let's take a quick flight across the globe, because the world was watching as both men made their mark internationally. Obama was known for diplomacy, with a notable example being the Iran nuclear deal, where he worked with world powers to limit Iran's nuclear capabilities in exchange for lifting sanctions. The man loved a good handshake and a multilateral agreement. While Obama sought to strengthen alliances, Trump's approach was, well, let's call it America first. From pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement to questioning NATO, Trump's foreign policy was all about tough talk and even tougher trade tariffs. Trump's slogan wasn't just for the economy, it was a blueprint for everything. America first meant less focus on multilateral cooperation and more focus on what the US could get out of the deal. Whether it was renegotiating NAFTA or pressuring China with tariffs, the result was a mix of praise from those who wanted a tough negotiator and criticism from those who preferred the steady hand of diplomacy. While Obama was out there receiving the Nobel Peace Prize, Trump was out there causing a diplomatic earthquake, then sending everyone a tweet the next morning about it. Section 4, the cultural divide, the US under their leadership. And what about how America felt during these presidencies? Obama was seen as a symbol of hope, change, and inclusivity. His speeches inspired millions to believe in the power of unity even when things weren't perfect. Of course, not everyone bought into that message, particularly when it came to issues like race and the economy, where division still ran deep. But Trump? Well, he was a cultural lightning rod. His presidency brought out some of the most passionate supporters and equally passionate critics. The divide between left and right grew even deeper, and his use of social media, particularly Twitter, transformed political discourse into something more chaotic and combative than ever before. Who needs traditional press conferences when you have Twitter, right? Trump's ability to make headlines every day was unmatched, and while he inspired loyalty in his base, he also seemed to deepen the cultural divides in the US. Conclusion: who had the biggest impact? So who had the biggest impact on the US? Was it Obama, with his calm leadership, healthcare reforms, and diplomatic touch? Or Trump, with his brash policies, America First mentality, and constant media presence? The truth is, both left their mark in different ways. Obama may have been the more globally minded president, aiming for unity and long-term stability. Trump, on the other hand, was a disruptor, shaking up everything from trade to immigration, and even how we view the role of the president in modern America. Whether you loved or hated them, you can't deny their influence on the US. So let us know in the comments, Obama, Trump, or someone else entirely. And if you enjoyed this political showdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more comparisons. Until next time!